Jim Miller, thank you so much for coming in on this short notice.
My pleasure. I just had a golf game I had to cancel. Not a big deal.
Not a big deal. So Jim was saying you predicted this to some degree.
Well, we knew it was coming, and we knew it was probably coming shortly after the draft. So I wrote on my website on Monday that Vilma would probably get a year. Smith would probably get, I said 6 to 8 games, and I thought another player or two, prominent player or two, might also be suspended. But I think the Saints, as Jen said, the Saints have prepared for this loss of Vilma. They've signed 3 guys. They also, I thought a signal was the curious contract renegotiation with Vilma they did last week, because you never see a player giving money back, but Vilma gave a couple $1 million back. So I think that's another signal that they knew something was afoot. Will Smith's loss, certainly. He's a great player. He's the veteran of the defensive line, but he's going to be the biggest loss. I don't think any of these losses are going to be as great as Sean Payton's loss.
Right.
I want to get back to that contract issue in just a minute, but first let me ask you, are you surprised we didn't see more players? It could have been 21, 27. We didn't see a Romer Harper. We didn't see a Malcolm Jenkins. You think the Saints got off easier than what some were expecting?
I think they got off easy. I really do. But I think you talk about these appeals coming up. I believe that the commissioner was very fair when he meted out punishment. He suspended coaches. He suspended club people. He suspended Jonathan Vilma for a season. So I don't think the Players Association, in their position, they have to draw a line in the sand. They have to show that they're representing the players, and this is all in the players' best interest. But in this case, I'd say let it go, put it all behind us, and don't drag it out anymore with a bunch of appeals that probably are going to be rejected in the end anyway.
Was there anything that really stood out when we got the details on each of the players to you? And based on that, when the players do appeal, does the commission then have to show this evidence? When it says multiple sources, does it have to turn all of these things over as you would see in court to say, this is all of our evidence? Because these guys are going to appeal and are going to want to see all of the evidence against them.
Well, the appeal from the Players Association, they probably are going to bring in a legal team. Under the situation, though, the commissioner has full autonomy, full authority, and he's the judge, jury, and prosecutor. And it will be interesting if they try to go all the way with the appeals, but I don't think the players or Players Association are going to look real good in the press or in the public eye if they do continue to appeal these things.
This probably is more of a legal question, but Jim, do they have to somewhat to protect against future lawsuits that name them personally for head injury, head trauma?
Well, you never know what's in the mind of prosecuting attorneys or people who are looking for lawsuits. You can Google NFL injury right now and come up with 24 law firms that are soliciting players. There's over 1,000 lawsuits now on the books that have been filed by former players, and Commissioner Goodell realizes that all these are going to someday be wrapped in a nice little bundle and become a tobacco type of class action lawsuit. He's got to take a hard stand, because he's got to show, hey, I didn't start this, I wasn't here when it started, but on my watch, I'm going to do everything I can to show that player safety is uppermost in my mind.
And this really is a first, you know, this whole thing that's unfolding as we report on this day by day. What do you say to Saints fans who may be saying, gosh, how do we get over this? As a former executive, you know, of the Saints,
right.
What do you think they should be looking for?
Well, I think the fans should be a little bit relieved today, because I believe everybody knew that Vilma was going to get a very serious penalty. I think the fact that only Will Smith, only 4 games, is probably positive news. And now I think this unknown is behind us. Everything that was not known to us is behind us. The only known that the known that we're working with now is getting Drew Brees signed. And so I think that's certainly next thing on the agenda, but it's going to be a positive thing when it happens.
Speaking of that, cap space is so important to the Saints. They're working under such a tight financial structure. Does Jonathan Vilma's suspension free up any extra money for the Saints?
Well, it should, Jen, it should. There's a thing in the NFL called tolling a contract. In a situation where a player, maybe a non-football injury, can't play, then the contracts are pushed forward. Now, I don't know if there's anything under the headlines that would not allow that or force Vilma to give the money to charity. I don't know any of that, but in normal cases, this money will not count this year, so the Saints do have a little bit of financial relief.
And Jen, you were saying he's so good at predicting because he's got his pulse on. Can you predict when we'll get some Drew Brees?
I'll tell you what, everything I predicted with regard to the player walkout or the lockout was right on, and everything I predicted with Drew Brees has been dead off. I'm batting nothing. So if anybody says, when's he going to sign, I always say tomorrow, because it sounds good.
It does sound good. Saints fans like to hear that.
Thank you so much, Jim Miller, for joining us on set and kind of putting this all in a context for us.
Anytime.